Hey folks, and how are you doing today? Now, welcome to this episode of The Next 12 Months. And today I am joined by the legend that is Keith Blakemore-Noble. Now, we're going to be talking about his industry and his predictions for, guess what, next 12 months. So, Keith, would you mind just saying hello to everyone and telling us a little bit of what you do and how you help people on a day-to-day basis?
Absolutely, Gary. Hello to everyone. So what I do, I'm a coach. I use tools like NLP and hypnotherapy to help people. Basically, I get them mindset mastery, which is all about mastering your own mindset so you can have the freedom to be, do, and have what you most want in life. That's it in a nutshell.
Nice. And you say you've got a couple of tools in your basket there.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing the industry that we're going to talk about is coaching.
That sounds good to me. Yep.
It is. No. So in terms of the different tools you've got, you mentioned NLP, hypnotherapy. How did you, really briefly, how did you get into all of this? Because they're all different skills that some people have picked up, but what I like about you is you've combined all of them.
Yeah. So I came into it by accident, really. I used to work in IT. I did a very successful career in IT for 20 odd years. But I was always well, not always, but I grew up and was painfully shy. I was terrified of speaking with strangers, which is why IT was a brilliant career, because you do it all behind the keyboard. But things came to a head, as they inevitably do. Whenever you have a problem and you ignore it for long enough, sooner or later, it comes to a head. And I said to myself, you can't go through life like this. What's your life going to be like in 10 years' time if you don't change? It's going to suck. So I resolved to do something. I had to do something. It was there was no option. It reaches that point where you just have to do something. And for me, that something was learning NLP, hypnosis, and coaching, purely to sort myself out, which I did. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Found I was really good at it. That's not me being big-headed. That was the other. My peers on the course were all saying, "Oh, you're really good at this." And there's only so many times that can happen before you go, actually, maybe they're right. Okay, maybe I am good at this. I helped friends with all sorts of stuff. They'll go, "Oh, wow, it's brilliant results." And I was thinking, it'd be nice to do this as a career, but I've got the high-paid IT job. I've got the outgoings that go with it. I couldn't afford to take the step back. And then the most magnificent stroke of luck, boss calls me into the office and says, "Really sorry, Keith, because of the financial situation, we have to make your position redundant. Here's a wheelbarrow full of cash. Never come back." Like, alrighty, I'm a coach now. Set myself up in business, using hypnosis, NLP, using coaching, and I have to say, using a lot of the skills that I picked up and developed over those 20 years in IT, because there's a lot of, you can kind of think of it as debugging, figuring out what's going on, really getting underneath it to find out what the problem is with the person. So that's how I got into it, by accident, but a very fortuitous one.
You know what? Happy accident. And that's what we all like. That's all good. So let's have a quick recap before we go into the main body of the podcast, which is the 3 predictions. So let's just recap the last 12 months. How have they been for you?
It has been interesting. I mean, it's difficult to keep track of time. I mean, the whole past 2 years is kind of just, it's a blur, isn't it? We had 2019, and then we had, now. So, I mean, certainly when the whole COVID side of things started, a lot of people were going, "Oh, I've got to cut all my expenditure because I don't know how long it's going to be." But people got into the swing of it and realized, actually, I've got lots of time. I've got this money coming in. I always said I wanted to do something about this problem I've got. I've got all the time and the money in the world now. Let's do it. So there was an initial big collapse in people spending. I guess that's the same across pretty much everything. Fairly quickly, it picked up. And the really cool thing was people now realize, hey, we can do this stuff over Zoom. Now, I've been using Zoom, and before that, Skype. Other platforms are available for many years. So I knew it could work, but previously conversations had always taken a long time to convince people you can do this, and then talk them through installing it and setting it up and reassuring them. Nowadays, and certainly over the past year, it's been, so how are we going to do this? We'll do it through Zoom. Cool, send me the link and I'll be there. Bam. So it's great that people are finally embracing the technology. I mean, the technology has been around for a long time, but society is now starting to embrace the technology, and we're actually starting to live the sort of stuff that back in the 80s we dreamed we would be able to be doing in the 21st century. And now we're actually doing it. So that's kind of what it's been for the past year, is people embracing this new way of working and realizing, hey, you know what? It's time to do something. As things open up, start having fears, but I've also got new opportunities. Let's make sure I'm in the best place to take full advantage of it, because we talk about normal. Things aren't going to be back to what they were. They never will be. And that's okay, because things never go back to how they used to be. We're always moving on. It's just sometimes normal is a gradual growth. Sometimes we have a sudden leap. And that's what we've had with the past year or so. And now people are realizing, hey, what we have now is normal. So let's do what we need to do to make the absolute most of it.
Brilliant. And just before we kind of go on to your three predictions, how have your kind of clients' fears changed over that time?
I think, from what I've seen, the underlying fears pretty much haven't changed. To be fair, it's the same fears, but it's what people are focusing on, because it's what people are realizing. Oh, I've got this fear. It hadn't been a problem for me before, but it is now. Mm-hmm. Let's start to address it. And certainly people had a lot of anxiety initially about this sort of thing being on camera.
Yeah. Nowadays,
certainly over the past year or so, people have got a lot more used to it. We love turning up to meetings in our dressed up at the top and in our pajamas and bunny slippers.
We've all done it.
Exactly. Yeah. I saw a photo on Instagram the other day, a whole group of business professionals. They got together, dressed up exactly how they were on Zoom, and they got all the posh shirts on, and then the slippers, the pajamas. Pretty cool. Yeah. So we had that for people to get through. Now people are starting to face a bit of anxiety about getting back into the open world again. Whether there's anxiety around the possibility of what happens with COVID is one thing, but also people have got so used to being in a more constricted bubble, and it's now getting back into the outside world. And even for the most extrovert of people, spending 2 years a little bit isolated does mean that going back into the bigger, wider world does have some sources of anxiety. So that's kind of where we're starting to see a lot of challenges for people at the moment, just as they get used to being back in that outside world again.
Love it. And this goes nicely onto your first prediction. So, Keith, what is your first prediction for your industry over the next 12 months?
My first prediction, this is something which seems to kind of come and go in cycles. And I'm starting to see that this will probably be something that gets talked about a reasonable amount over the next year. Now, I say talked about because it often gets talked about and then nothing happens. I suspect that's probably what will happen again this time, but there will probably be a lot to talk about it, and that is about regulating the industry. Okay. Because there have been, I mean, with a lot of people losing jobs and all this sort of thing, a lot of people have gone. I mean, you see often on all these adverts online, £25 and you can be trained and become a coach. Like, oh, no, you can't. A lot of people have taken those, which means there are going to be quite a few people who have been taken advantage of by the people offering those courses, who now genuinely believe, hey, I can coach, I can help people, and will be going out there to offer their services to help people. And with all due respect to them, and it's not their fault. It's these charlatans who are flooding the market with these cheap courses. They're not well prepared for helping. I mean, yes, they'll be able to help some people, but you'll reach a point where somebody has some deeper things going on. It's like, I can't deal with that. I don't know how to deal with that. My script doesn't say that. My script says you should be better now. So I think there will be increasing calls for regulation within the industry. Now, the problem is, I mean, with something like nursing, it's easy to have regulations. With something like architecture, building, my previous career was in IT, you can have regulations in that. But with this sort of thing, it's much, much harder to have regulations. I mean, With building, physics gets in the way, or physics is very much involved. So you can absolutely have building regulations. You must build your building like this, otherwise it's going to collapse. That's just the way it is. With coaching and all the different modalities, we don't fully understand how any of them actually work deep at the unconscious level. We've all got different theories as to what's going on, but there's nothing actually concrete that you can build regulations on. Plus, I mean, with things like hypnosis and things like NLP, nobody actually owns it. So there's no one body that say, we are responsible for the standard of it, which is going to means if you do start going down the route of regulation, it's going to be a commercial grab, and there's going to be so much infighting. I mean, if you look at NLP, the two co-founders, Richard Bandler and John Bandler and Grinder, Richard and John, they actually fell out for like a decade, and they were suing and countersuing each other for about a decade over this. They've finally, I think basically all their lawyers and judges basically knocked their heads together. They finally kind of grudgingly agreed they can each be referred to as co-founders of NLP, and they can each teach their own, and they leave each other alone. But they were the two people who created this, and even they couldn't get together. So I think there's going to be calls for regulation. Mm-hmm. But I think, again, it's going to fall down because the practicality means that we can't actually do it in any meaningful way. The only way it will be done will be purely commercially driven, which is what got us into this mess in the first place.
It's interesting. And it's nice to get a bit of kind of background into the tools that you use. But you're the second person to echo this kind of need for regulations and a regulatory body, or even just kind of set standards that people have. So it's really interesting. Really good prediction. Good first one. What's your second one, buddy? What's prediction number 2?
Prediction number 2. I think we're going to start to see, and this is probably going to be a slightly longer evolving one, but I think we're going to start to see a bit more of a drive, and this ties in with what I was talking about earlier, a bit more of a drive to understand what's going on. Because, I mean, we've got NLP, we've got hypnosis, we've got CBT, we've got all of these kind of talking therapies, we've got psychiatry, then you've got some of the more esoteric ones, and you've got Reiki, and you've got energy work, and you've got all of the huge range of modalities and so on. And increasingly you're getting ones that are popping up, which it is just a money grab. It's somebody's come up with a crazy idea, and somebody advertising that chocolate is an octave of the sun, and that gravity is a toxin. It's like, what? And they're clearly just money grabbing. Yeah. And I think rightly, there's going to be an increase in people kind of looking into, well, what are these things? Does it work? How does it work? What's actually going on here? So that we can get a better understanding of how these things work, of what's going on, of which ones are more or less likely to be valid, for want of a better word. Now, the problem that we've got here is how do you test this? I mean, in a medical environment, when you're testing a drug, for example, it's very easy to do double-blind testing. So somebody, you get half of your drug is placebo, half of it isn't. Somebody sets that up. That's all then randomized. Somebody else then administers, so that the patient has no way of knowing whether they're getting the placebo or the real, and the person administering it has no way of knowing either. So it's not perfect, but it's a very good way of making sure there's no human bias, because we all have biases. Every single one of us, we all have biases. That's just the way we are. But you can't do that with things like NLP and hypnotherapy and Reiki, and with all of which, whatever modality is you're using, you can't do double-blind trials of it, which makes it a lot harder to see what's going on. It makes it a lot harder to rule out the placebo effect, and it makes it a lot harder to rule out whatever else is going on. But I think, and I certainly hope, there will be more. I mean, I remember 6 years ago, a certain politician in the UK announced, "We've had enough of experts." And that seems to have driven the narrative across everything ever since, unfortunately.
Mm.
I think people are going to start to realize, actually, maybe experts are not such a bad thing. Maybe having somebody who knows what they're talking about and understands this stuff is a good thing. And we're going to start to get a bit more investigation into what's going on. And crucially, figuring out how can we figure out and how can we test this in ways which do give us meaningful results.
Yeah, that's really deep, and it's a deep question. That it really is a deep question. There could be a whole podcast series just dedicated onto that particular subject. But it is interesting that actually, as you said, there are ways of doing blind testing. There's a scientific method where you can repeat the results over time, and you see patterns, and you can test different variables. You can't do that with the human body. And that's the tricky bit.
All the mind, yeah, exactly.
All the mind, yeah. It's good point. Really good, interesting point. We've gone deep in this one. So you've had your point number one, point number two. What's your third one? What's your third prediction for next year?
My third prediction is, I think we're going to start, and again, this is one which is going to go on for a long time, but I think we're going to start seeing it, is the application of AI, artificial intelligence, in coaching. Now, I don't think, certainly within the next 12 months, we're not going to reach the point where you can basically connect up to your computer and you get this wonderful avatar that takes you through and does all the therapy and everything. We're nowhere near that yet. Although we're probably closer to it than we think we are, because most of these things tend to be closer than you think. I mean, there's that great rule of thumb where we overestimate what we can achieve in a year and we underestimate what we can achieve in 10 years. And when you look back over the past 20 years, the way tech has advanced in all areas, it certainly bears out.
Yeah.
But I think we will start to see AI starting to be used in triaging and also for perhaps less severe issues that people have, even if it's just to kind of help them manage their daily mood and so on. I mean, we already sort of see that in some ways. The apps you can get on your mobile phones and your tablets and so on, which help you track your mood and track all these things and recommend things that you can do. So we're already starting to see that. Now, those are probably not really using AI at the moment. They're very much just fairly fixed rule base. If somebody starts to feel this, give them this playlist to listen to. But we're going to start to see AI starting to be used in that, where perhaps you don't have to say, you don't enter into your mood tracker, today I'm feeling this. Your mood tracker looks at everything that's going on and goes, they look as though they're kind of about to go on a downward slide. Let's do this just to help keep them up. Because I know, take Apple, for example, and again, other tech solutions are available. But I know Apple are doing lots of work with things like the watch and so on to really monitor everything you can about the body to help you have a better understanding of what's going on. And those they are using to predict, to warn you, basically, you should probably see a doctor. Go and see a heart specialist because we started detecting some inconsistencies going on there. And there have been cases where people have done that and they've caught something which could have been potentially very serious. So that stuff's already happening on the physical side. We can't directly measure what's going on in someone's brain unless you connect them up to all sorts of wires and probes and such like. However, we do know that what goes on in here affects what goes on here. And there are physiological changes, temperature, breathing, blood flow, all of these sorts of things. So I think in both of those areas, we're going to start to see AI being used, to kind of work out what a person's mood is like, even if it's just something like your computer decides, hey, you probably want a cheerful playlist for today or whatever. And also to triage, I need to see a specialist. I need to see my therapist. Oh, what's the problem? Okay, well, we've got this, or you can come see the therapist for this. So I think we're going to start to see that, and it's It's exciting. It's scary, but it's also quite exciting.
Well, it is scary, but it is also exciting, and I'm in complete agreement with you for that one, because I read a book very recently called titled 2041. The author's name escapes me, so apologies for this. But they were saying, actually, one prediction is that some people, and now this is obviously in 20 years' time, so a lot longer than the next 12 months, but AI will be basically, with the amount of data points available to them, be able to predict what your mood is and what you need at that particular time. Which echoes exactly what you said. And it all goes down to data points. AI is great for shifting through loads of information and kind of connecting patterns where it will take us humans a lot longer to do than what they're trained to do, because AI will have that particular task in mind to do so. So the more data points you can give it, the better it will be. If you've missed your calm, if you haven't done your calm meditation daily practice for 7 days, and your vitals are down and you're listening to stuff on Apple Podcasts, which is more doom and gloom, they can start to kind of link all these data points together. So I think you're onto something there. Really do think you're onto something there. So it's a really good prediction. So just to recap, what are your 3 predictions in short, bite-sized chunks?
My 3 predictions for the next 12 months in short, bite-sized chunks. First, we're going to see increasing calls for regulation throughout the industry. Second, we're going to see more of an attempt to understand what's going on and how these things work, so we can figure out which things work and which things are just scams. And third, we're going to start to see the development and incorporation of AI into coaching, not as full interventions, but even if it's just to the point of your watch saying, you know what, you should probably see a therapist.
Love it. Really good predictions. Really good predictions and stuff we can start getting our teeth into and learning a little bit more about. So that is fantastic. If people wanted to find more info about you, your business, how you help people, your socials, how can they connect with you?
The best place to go is my website, keithblakemore-noble.com. All one word, no hyphen, just keithblakemore-noble.com, or just look for Keith Blakemore-Noble on any search engine. I am blessed with having a unique name, so whatever you find out there, good or bad, it's me. And I'm on all the main socials as well. So yeah, just look for the name Keith Blakemore-Noble, and whatever you stumble upon, that'll be me, and connect, and love to have a chat.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Keith. And thank you so much, listeners and viewers, for taking this time out of your day and listening and watching this podcast. This has been the next 5 months with Keith Blakemore-Noble. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Keith, as I said before, cheers, buddy. Thank you very much for your time. And we'll catch you all later. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.